Do you know those small black and red bugs that you can often see practically all year round, sometimes in very large numbers, for example in our parks? People use various names to refer to them, including tram drivers, trams, little smiths, doctors, and dupsiki. No kidding. And I've even heard the name cemetery bugs, because apparently some people associate them with cemeteries where they're very common. But what exactly are these strange black and red creatures? Why can you so often find them in such large groups, especially at the base of trees? What do they feed on? What impact do they have on us and on the environment? Are they dangerous? And probably the most important question, why do they walk around for so long joined at the rear ends? I will answer these and many other questions for you in today's video. Discussing tram drivers alone lacks context, so it's time for a trip. Preparations are complete. The company sweatshirt is on. Just a sip of coffee left. Ooh, I think the elevator broke down on the second floor. There's my little Toyota. All right, let's go. In general, if anyone's wondering where I'm going, I'm heading to Szczytniki Park in Wrocław. Honestly, any park would be fine. Seriously. Seriously, now that spring is starting, we already have the calendar spring today. There are so many firebugs and they're everywhere. They're very common and you can really find them at every step. I chose Szczytniki Park because I haven't been there recently, so we'll see what I can find. This. All right, my dear friends, we're here. This is what the park looks like at the entrance, and we're going to look for those little critters there. Chenna, I need to check some tree trunks, but I don't see anything yet. It would be worse if I don't find them, as that would be a failure. However, they must be here since they're everywhere. With the sun shining, I'm confident I'll locate them. They might even be on those little clouds, as they enjoy walking there too. There's no sign of them anywhere. Oh, and here we're basically entering the park. Hey, wait a second. Wait, there it is. And boom. Well, I really had to look for it. All right, we have 2 of them, but we can look for even more because these 2 are just chilling, probably a couple. All right, my friends, bingo, I walked about 32 feet. Seriously, there's a big tree over there. It's covered with those red bugs. We're going to the big tree that's even more covered with those red bugs. Look what's happening here. You just need to take a walk, go outside, and you'll find plenty of them. Well, for example, right here. The insects are absolutely everywhere. On the ground, the whole tree is just wrapped in them. Here on the ground, they're walking around too. And if you look, if you take a wider perspective and squint your eyes, everything is literally moving. So what are these insects exactly? So you already know the common names, tram drivers, firebugs, and so on. But this insect in Polish is usually called the wingless firebug. And I don't know why it's called firebug, but I do know why it's called wingless. Because as it turns out, these insects have reduced flying wings and are not capable of flight. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The scientific name, because there is one as well, is Spirochorus apterus. And the second part, as far as I know, apterus literally means wingless, in the sense that A means without. Hey, and here is, oh damn, a tiny jumping spider. I wonder what species it is. It doesn't look like an ordinary one. No, it's not a regular harlequin. Maybe I could manage to get a bigger macro shot. Recording handheld is tough, especially with tiny jumping spiders. All right, the jumping spider is recorded. It turned out somehow. Now let's get back to those red and black little guys. So what are these firebugs? Because that might also be a question some of you are asking yourselves. Well, they are true bugs. They are also heteropteran insects. I've already talked about these heteropteran bugs more than once on this channel, actually even in one of the recent videos. To learn more about bug characteristics, watch the bedbug video, where I covered the topic in detail. Here, I'll highlight the key points. And the most important points are that heteropteran bugs are, of course, insects, and they have a very interesting and very characteristic mouth part, which is, I believe, of the piercing sucking type. Basically, it means that from their mouth, from their head, sticks out a kind of tube, which they use to suck up whatever they feed on. Here we arrive at the core issue, the dietary habits of firebugs and their ecological function. They feed on various things, generally in liquid form. Fireflies, for example, can obtain bodily fluids from dying or dead insects as they are not predatory. Wingless ants do not hunt other insects. They rather take advantage of the fact that if an insect dies, I don't know, an earthworm, a caterpillar, or some other soft insect that they can pierce, then they simply feed on the juices of such an insect. However, the main basic component of the diet of koale bezskrzydła is plant juices, including juices from linden seeds. And that's why orchardists who plant lindens don't really get along with koale. In extreme cases with food shortages, such as no linden seeds or other insects, a ladybug population can resort to cannibalism, sucking each other dry. What's more, they can be coprophagous. That means they feed on feces. Seriously, they can drink the juices and nutrients from feces. So in this way, a bit like fungi, they contribute to the natural balance in the environment by regulating various processes and cleaning it up. These insects are generally very useful, but they also have some negative aspects in addition to their positive sides. The negative aspects are that they can sometimes be bothersome. That's the first thing. And secondly, since they also feed on plant sap, sometimes they cause the plants to become weaker. And for example, orchardists, if they plant young lindens, sometimes complain that these firebugs damage the plants a bit, so then they have to get rid of them somehow. And there are various ways to control these firebugs, but for an ordinary person like me, they don't pose any threat, they don't bother me in any way, they just exist. But someone might say, okay, if the firebug is able to pierce through another insect, then isn't it possible that such an insect could bite a human? Or rather, to be correct, I should say sting a human, and the answer here is no. In fact, many true bugs, either intentionally or by accident, are able to feed on human blood. Among them are bedbugs and some bugs from the Reduvidae family, which feed on human blood and transmit diseases. However, bugs like firebugs are absolutely harmless to humans in the sense that they don't bite people, they don't hunt people, they're not interested at all in human blood or other human bodily fluids, so here we can be completely at ease. The only bad thing that can happen if we take such a bug in our hand is that, to put it bluntly, it will poop on us, meaning it will release its unpleasant smelling substance. Now, occurrence. My dear friends, as you can see, I'm in the park. You know exactly where I am, and I'll be honest with you, there are absolutely countless firebugs here. Not only are all these trees, but I suspect all the trees in the area are covered with them. Maybe let's do this. See, there really are a lot of firebugs. They gather in clusters, and what's more, there are plenty of them on the ground too. Seriously, I walk a few meters away from this tree, and boom! There's another firebug sitting on the ground. These firebugs are just everywhere, scattered all around. Pretty nice Porsche, but why do they do that? I mean, why do they gather in such groups? Honestly, I don't really know. I mean, that's just their lifestyle. I don't want to say that they're herd animals, because it's not really a herd, but it's true that firebugs just live in groups, and that's how they like it, that's how they're comfortable, that's how they feel safe. Although this safety argument is somewhat baseless on my part because, well, just look at what a firebug looks like. It's red and black. It has very contrasting and very, in English you'd say, striking. How do you even say that in Polish? You know, such warning, vivid colors, and that clearly tells any animal that would want to eat a firebug, like, listen, I'm poisonous, I'm not tasty, don't eat me. And that's the truth, my friends. There really aren't many animals that will feed on firebugs. Leaving aside the insects that actually can hunt firebugs, the rest of the animals don't touch them for one simple reason. It's because they stink, and they really do stink. Just like many other true bugs, they release a very unpleasant smelling substance, which in both smell and, worst of all, taste, is a bit like rotten raspberries. Eating stink bugs or other firebug relatives is generally disgusting. They often end up in blackberries, and biting into a weird-tasting raspberry is a familiar experience for those who have encountered them. Firebugs have almost no natural predators, with the rare exception of badgers. Here's an intriguing fact. A moment ago, I told you that these are bugs that can't fly. And technically speaking, I lied to you because actually, let's say about 99% of the firebug population is equipped with these micro-reduced wings that can't lift them into flight. But there is a described and known so-called macropterous form, which has fully developed hind wings. Since true bugs have two pairs of wings, the first so-called hemelytra and membranous second wings lift the true bug. This form, with fully developed wings, is capable of flight. However, this is extremely rare, and it's generally considered that these true bugs don't fly, as most of them don't. One more interesting fact. They are usually black and red, and as I mentioned, these are heteropteran true bugs. And this in turn implies the fact that they undergo the so-called incomplete metamorphosis, involves molting multiple times until adulthood is reached, similar to spiders. In short, they lack a pupal stage. And now when a firebug molts before it gets its adult colors, for a moment it's literally yellow-white. And this applies not only to firebugs, but also to other true bugs and even other insects like cockroaches, for example. In terrarium groups, posts often show white cockroaches labeled as albinos. No, they're not albinos, just freshly molted individuals. Interestingly, while freshly molted individuals of this species are pale, soft, and so on, there is actually an albino form that has been described. And it just looks like a washed out version of the bug, meaning it lacks those red elements and instead is yellow-orange. So yes, such a form is also described, and it's good to be aware of that. You now know what these insects are, their food sources, and their general role in the environment. Now another important thing, why do they so often walk around joined at the rear ends? And you know what? I'm searching for such a pair, and if found, I'll record them for you. The explanation for this situation is simple, even mundane. What you see, if there are two like this, here they are. You see here, they're going to join at the rear ends. If you see a male and female firebug joined at their rear ends, with one facing forward and the other backward, it's simply two individuals copulating. But what's interesting here is that usually in insects or arachnids, copulation lasts from several seconds to a few or several hours. But in firebugs, copulation can last up to 7 days. Imagine that. They can stay connected to the female and copulate for 7 whole days. And this happens because the males are very possessive, in the true sense of the word, and they simply limit access of other males to the same female this way. So it's like a natural fight for the female and so on, so they can stay with the female and remain inside her for several days. It's an incredible phenomenon in the world of beetles and insects in general, which is why we often see them in the so-called train formation. That's all from me, friends. I'll leave this colony here to live on this and other trees. I hope I was able to share with you some interesting knowledge about some of the most common insects in our country. Let me know in the comments if firebugs are called something different in your region, as I'd love to hear other names for them. That's all, bye. You know what, I was already heading back, I'm literally by the car, and of course it started raining, but I found a beautiful beetle on the road. A little one from the ground beetle family. He is, well, listen, he's about 1 centimeter long, but just look at what an amazing metallic color he has. That's something beautiful. That's a fun fact to end with.